If you follow my work, you know by now that I've been calling for the FWC board to be replaced for quite some time now. Earlier this year, the people of Florida have been getting louder and louder in their opposition to this chemical spraying. So the FWC was forced to take a pause from the spraying and go on a listening tour. The meetings were all standing room only, and they were all overwhelmingly against this spraying. Thousands of people signed petitions and came out and pleaded with the commission to stop this spraying. So after the meetings ended, they went right back to the spraying. To completely ignore thousands of people, one has to wonder, are they on the take, or are they just not smart enough to see what they are doing is wrong? I'm going to introduce you to each one of the commissioners, and you tell me in the comments below. The first one is our only female on the board, and her name is Sonia Rude. She claims she was born and raised in Lake Jackson, Texas. So I Googled Lake Jackson, and I was shocked to learn that the Dow Chemical Company employs most of the people in this small town, and the residents there even refer to it as Dowtown. Sonia has no wildlife experience, but she claims to enjoy hunting, fishing, hiking, and bird watching. I guess that's all you need to do to become a commissioner, is to like our wildlife. Listen to her response on dropping herbicides from a helicopter.
I feel for the guy that said he was watching a helicopter drop, and the kid said that's gross. I agree. I don't know how we can control it. I feel like it must be, I don't know the process, but I feel like if we can do it by boat, I would prefer that. I don't know what you have to say about that.
I find it quite disturbing to learn that an FWC commissioner doesn't even know the process in which these chemicals are being dispersed. Next up is Gary Lester. On his bio, not one mention of liking the outdoors. So I guess to become an FWC commissioner, you don't even have to like the outdoors. He lists the numerous organizations that he is affiliated with, including Vice President of Community Relations at the Villages. That's a crucial Republican power base in statewide elections. He is an ordained minister of the Presbyterian Church. He served on the United States Military Academy Nominations Board and the Judicial Nominating Board. And currently he sits on Florida's Constitution Revision Commission. Not a single one of these organizations have anything to do with Florida's wildlife. It is obvious that Gary doesn't have the time to do any research on chemical spraying. Take a listen to this.
Director Sutton, that's the right terminology, that we do need to get back to work, doing the best we can. I like when Kip used that word earlier, and Kip, again, kudos to you and your staff. You're doing a great job of listening and trying to give us all the information we need. You talked about how that using the spraying and the chemical application is the best practice. We don't have a perfect way, so we need to do the best way that we have available to us, and I think there's...
At this point, the FWC had only been in the pause for a couple of weeks, and Gary couldn't wait to get back to the spraying. Doesn't that smell a little fishy? Next is Joshua Callum. He is the president of Garcia Farms and the Garcia Mining Company. Joshua also sits on the RAC board of the South Florida Water Management District. As president of a mining company, you have to get permits from the South Florida Water Management District and the DEP. Joshua was in the process of expanding his mining operation, and this is a copy of a permit that was just issued to him by the DEP. The timing of this expansion is very suspect because Joshua already sells rock to the South Florida Water Management District for all the STAs, but in a few years, the EAA reservoir will soon begin construction. I've already reported that it will take up to 40 million cubic yards of rock to build this reservoir. So if he gets his contract, his company stands to make millions of dollars on this one job. Check out what he thinks about the men and women that spray poisons all over our lakes.
Contract sprayer down there, and they carried the utmost professionalism and took the time to walk through how they applied. We actually saw them before they even knew we were out there, so watching their application. So those are members of our community, and that was said earlier. So I just want to tell you that every person I came across have the utmost professionalism, so the organization.
Shame on you, Joshua, for supporting chemical spraying of water hyacinth and water lettuce, because you already know how important these plants are for removing nutrients. Your farm is using these plants to filter nitrogen and phosphorus out of the water before you discharge it back into the Everglades. Next up is Robert Spotswood. He is the Chief Executive Officer at Spotswood Companies. He develops and builds hotels, resorts, marinas, and supposedly he is one of the largest private employers in the Florida Keys. A very wealthy man without one bit of wildlife experience. It was reported that he gave Governor Rick Scott $13,000 for his Senate campaign.
I get really distressed when I hear some of the stories about the way it's changed over 50 years. I watched that in the Keys with our reef and our waters, so it really touches home for me to hear about the loss of habitat, how the quality's falling off, etc. So believe me, it's something we take very, very seriously.
Robert, if you would just stop poisoning the lakes and let the grasses grow back, these lakes will heal themselves. Our next commissioner is Michael Soule. He is the Vice President of Environmental Services at NextEra Energy. That's the multi-billion-dollar parent company of Florida Power and Light. He also serves as the Secretary of the FDEP. I wonder if he helped Joshua get his permit to expand his mining operation. Michael got his bachelor's in marine biology from the Florida Institute of Technology. Because of his degree, the rest of the commissioners rely on him to be the expert for any science question. So you got to listen to this.
I would like us to get out of the pause. I would like us to get out of the pause. I would like us to get out of the pause.
Michael, it's only been a couple of weeks.
I think that the ramifications of, thinking more about it and not allowing us to continue to manage the invasive exotics has a significant adverse environmental impact if we hold too much water. So I am concerned. I applaud you for hitting the pause.
If this is the guy that all the other commissioners look for answers, it's no wonder why our lakes are in the shape they are in. Our last board member is Gary Nicklaus. He is the son of Jack Nicklaus, and like his dad, he's a professional golfer. But he never got as good as Jack, so he designs and builds golf courses instead. The Nicklaus family are good friends with Governor Rick Scott and are regular contributors to his campaigns, even hosting fundraisers on his behalf. Despite having no wildlife experience, he at least acknowledges that the chemicals that they spray are dangerous.
I'm not a chemist, I'm not a biologist, but I have to say that there's definitely issues with the chemicals that we're using. I mean, there's a lot of evidence that says that. I don't know the efficacy of those studies, but there's lawsuits, there's everything based on this stuff.
Gary is just one more example of Rick Scott paying back his political favors. Florida's wildlife deserves so much better. Now that I've shown you the commissioners, it's time to introduce you to the FWC's top biologists. These are the ones that the commissioners listen to and they make their decision. Kip Froelich is the division leader of Habitat and Species Conservation. That's the division in charge of invasive plant management. You would think by now he would know the difference between water hyacinth and hydrilla, but let's listen in on his lecture in Gainesville.
Joby, and this is about the same spot on the lake after a hydrilla infestation got out of control. Sort of same geographic hyacinth, sorry. We got folks that are good in the weeds. They're listening, that's good.
The guy that corrected him was my buddy, Scott Wilson. Kip put out a video not long ago where he stated that he had just found out what a tussock was.
Growing up in Florida, been on a lot of lakes. It wasn't until recently I knew what a tussock was. I've learned, but what's a tussock? It's not a word that a lot of folks know what that even is. And you say we're removing tussocks from Lake Lafayette. Yeah.
Kip, I know you watch my videos, so today I'm going to teach you what a tussock is and how they are made. It starts when you spray the crap out of spatterdock and kill hundreds of acres of this important plant. When it dies, the roots are very buoyant, so they float to the surface. The wind pushes these roots together and they start piling up. More and more of these floating roots build up and they get pushed up against shorelines. The plant matter starts rotting and turns back into mud. Then it dries out and becomes dirt. Seeds from terrestrial plants blowing in the wind end up on this very fertile soil and start to grow. Before you know it, you have an island that can support all kinds of plants, even trees. The more you spray and kill spatterdock, the larger these islands become. Since they are floating, they can move, and in a hurricane, they can and do wash up on people's property. During Hurricane Irma, a tussock covered this marina on Orange Lake and caused the owner to shut down their business. When that happens, the only choice you have is to mechanically harvest it out of the lake, and that can cost millions of dollars because it takes a lot of heavy equipment. First, they use an excavator to dig these tussocks out and load on a barge. Then they use airboats to push the barge back to shore where it can be offloaded by even more equipment. Finally, the material needs to be trucked away. So Kip, the next time that you tell people that mechanically harvesting costs more than chemical spraying, you need to tell the truth, because if you would have harvested the plants in the first place, you wouldn't have to go back years later and remove them when they turn into a tussock. The next two biologists that I want to introduce to you is Daniel Kirkland and Matt Phillips. Daniel was the lead biologist on Lake Kissimmee in 2011, and Matt Phillips was her boss, and together they ordered the spraying of Grassy Island. They started with a product called Endothol, but that didn't get the results that they wanted. So in 2015, they ordered the island to get a product called Aquathol Super K. They dropped this poison from helicopters and airboats, and by 2017, the island had completely disappeared. There was an avalanche of public outcry, so the FWC took Danielle off the lake. But they didn't fire her or reprimand her, they gave her a raise and a new title. She is now the head of field operations for the FWC. People, you can't make this stuff up. We need a complete overhaul at the FWC. The commissioners and the top biologists have to go. Please join me in the next FWC meeting in Stuart because it's time to start getting loud. I love all you guys and gals that watch and share my videos, and I can't wait to read your comments to this one.